mower.
No problem, Gary. Let me go get it for you.
See, little Johnny? One day you can be a lawnmower mechanic too, just like Taryl.
Oh, Willie! I like this stuff, Grandpa!
You like mowers, little Johnny?
Yeah!
Well, here. A true lawnmower man needs the hat to prove it.
Oh! Wow! This is awesome!
Well, look at that, little Johnny. You're already on your way.
This hat smells funny.
That's the smell of hard work, little Johnny.
Why does hard work smell like the outhouse at the baseball field, Grandpa?
Well, look, we gotta get going. Grandma's waiting on us. Come on there, Johnny, let's go.
Bye, little Johnny.
Bye, Taryl. Thanks for the hat.
See you next time.
I'm the lawnmower mechanic. Time to service Grandpa's mower. Looks like it needs some gas. Now I gotta add some oil. All good.
Pterodactyl here, and I'm standing in the yard of my repair shop, and today we're going to talk about the most common lawn tractor engines we see and the problems that they have. Take for instance this John Deere here. Oh, this one's got a Kohler Command 17.5. This is the Command engine. This is Kohler's better engine. This is a good engine. Most common problem we see with this one, leaky needle and seat. Leaks, needle and seat fails, starts leaking, fills up the crankcase full of gasoline, mixes with the oil. Fix, Kohler's got a carb kit. We've got a video on this. They've got a carb kit that has the needle and seat. It's about $35, $40 for that carb kit. That takes care of the problem. Another problem we see, this fuel pump fails. If yours has the fuel pump, not all of these have the fuel pump. Some of them are gravity fed. But if your gas tank is under the seat in the back of the tractor, you're going to have a fuel pump. That's what this is. A lot of you may be looking at your engine and going, what is this thing? What does that do? Well, that's the fuel pump. See, the gas line runs to it. That's the fuel pump. And that fails. Not often, but it does fail. Other than that, that is the most common problem we see with this. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Another thing, the coils go out. We have that too, where it loses spark and you have to replace the coil. But other than that, this is a good engine. I like this engine. I actually have one of these on my Toro Zero Turn. So this is a good motor. Kohler Command, single cylinder. All right, let's see what's under the hood of this one. Oh, another Kohler, but this is the Courage. And let me tell you, you gotta have a lot of courage to work on this one. Okay, the Kohler Courage. Let me think. What problems do we have with this one? A lot of problems. This is called their bucket engine, because when it fails, it kicked the bucket. No, it's called the bucket engine because the oil pan on a regular small engine is down here. This one's at the top. And what we see a lot is those bolts that hold that cover on the top of the engine, those bolts loosen up and then this thing will start knocking like it's got a rod knock. And a lot of times it's not the connecting rod, it's the bolts that hold the cover on. So you have to take this apart and tighten them bolts down. Usually take them out, clean them real good, and Loctite them back in, if you catch it in time. If not, what happens is they work their way out, flywheel spins around, starts shearing them off, and eventually end up cracking the block. So that's one of the problems we see. Another problem, it's got plastic cam gears in it. And the compression release is on the cam gear. So we've had it where the little part that holds the spring for the compression release, that little plastic part that's molded onto the gear, snaps off, compression release doesn't work, it cranks real hard. So to fix that, you could take the cam from the other side, cam gear, and put it on this side, and take the one that's broken, put it on that side. But it's only a matter of time because it's plastic, and heat deteriorates that plastic. That other cam gear is going to fail. Another problem we see is the starters go bad on these a lot. And again, leaky needle and seat. And once in a while, a coil issue where the coil goes bad. But the major problem we see is that cover loosening up on the top, knocks real bad like it's got a rod knock, and those plastic cams breaking and the compression release failing and they're cranking real hard usually takes out the starter. Oh, and another problem, this valve cover leaks. It's got a cork gasket. I got a couple videos that show you how to seal it well, but that's another problem. Leaky valve cover. Well, since we're on a crawler binge, here's another crawler. Another Courage. This is the twin cylinder Courage. This one, haven't really seen a lot of major problems with it. Leaky valve covers and the starters. We've been having the starters go out. But other than that, not a lot of telltale major problems when this one comes in. Like I said, leaky valve covers and the starters going out. Oh, and another problem. Valves out of adjustment, making it crank hard. Set the valves. All right, let's see what we got under the hood of this one. Okay, under here we have a horizontal crawler command. They also make this in a vertical. Now if you don't know what horizontal and vertical means this way, side shaft. Vertical means this way, down. So this is a crawler command, horizontal, vertical and horizontal. We see the same problems. Blown head gaskets, coils, multiple coil problems depending on when yours was made and when it was made and what ignition system it has on it. They have these which has the little black square box on here, which is called a SAM module, which stands for Spark Advanced Module. They have it with the DSAI, but this one's just got the standard coils on it. So this one, blown head gaskets, is the main problem we see with this motor. And I'm trying to think what else, other than, you know, the typical carburetor problems, because people let it sit with gas in it. And oh, leaky sump gasket. And that's only on the model that has the gasket. Most of these are siliconed on. But there is a model crawler command that uses an actual paper gasket. I have a video on it, and the only way to tell is by the one you have. So, they've made this engine for a long time. There's a lot of different variations of it. This is the crawler command vertical. Same as that horizontal I showed you. This is the vertical version. Same motor, Just the vertical, not a horizontal. Same problems. Ignition, head gaskets, occasionally leaky sump gasket if it's got the paper gasket. Again, we have videos on all these. All right, you rest well, little buddy. Oh, what do we got here? Look at this one. Looks like it's been sitting here a while. Got all kind of weeds growing up around it. Even got weeds growing off of it. You know what that tells me? This mower's junk. Let's see what kind of engine's in this one. Oh, here we go. Briggs and Stratton. This is the Briggs and Stratton Twin, also known as an Intech. I'll show you a couple other versions of it that say Intech. But this is the Briggs and Stratton Twin Intech. Most common problem with this, leaky sump gasket. Got a video on it. Shows you how to change that sump gasket. Another problem, head problems, where the valve guide comes out of the head, starts moving, bends the push rod. A lot of times I'm like, okay, well maybe there's a mouse nest or something in there. It's overheating the head. A lot of times we take them apart, no mouse nest. It's just, I don't know, probably crappy design. But people come in with bent push rods, I go, well the valve guide moved in the head, you got to put a new head on it. Oh, just give me some new push rods. And they put new push rods in there and it just bends them again. So that's the common problem we see with this, and carburetor problems. But a lot of the carburetor problems we see are all due to people not running their tractors and not running enough fuel through it all the time and letting it sit. That fuel that they sell us now is not good, and it sits for a while, it starts to plug up these carburetors. So that's the common problem we see with this. Leaky sump gasket and the head problems with the head, with the valve guide moving in the head and bending the push rods. Sleep well, little buddy. This is basically the same engine as the one we just showed. It's just a different version of it. But physically, the engine block and heads and everything is the same as that last one I just showed you. Oh yeah, another problem that we've run into occasionally, but it's still a problem. On the older version of this twin Intech, they call it a bunch of different names, they had a metal intake manifold, or plenum if you want to call it. This one's got a plastic one. And as you can see, it's been fused together in two pieces. So they did have a problem where these were breaking and sucking air, and that would cause like a surging problem. And it could be something as simple as this thing having a breach in it where it's sucking air and you can't see it. Could be this plastic plenum. So that's another problem we've seen with this twin Intech, which again they make under a bunch of different names and models and put different stickers on them. But when you look at these engines, as long as I have, you kind of know, okay, that's this, that's that. Oh yeah, another problem. Yeah, see, I keep finding problems every time I look at one. This hose. This is your vacuum hose. This vacuum hose gets dry rotted, starts sucking air. That'll create a problem with fuel because this is what it needs to pump. So a lot of times this hose will get dry rotted and it's very hard to see. So you have to take a close look at it. So that's another problem we see, common problem. Check that hose. Here's another one of those V-twin Intechs. And looky here, another problem, leaky valve covers. So we got leaky valve covers, got leaky sump gasket, we got head problems with the valve guides, and we've got problems with the vacuum hose on the fuel pump. Again, most common problems. I'm sure you guys go, oh, what about this problem? What about that problem? Well, that's not really a common problem, maybe. These are the most common problems that we see! Here's the Briggs & Stratton single cylinder intake. Now I know the sticker's missing, but this is a single cylinder intake. Most common problem we see with this. Valves out of adjustment, making it crank hard, and the compression release going bad on the camshaft. And the camshaft going bad. We have videos on this motor, a lot of videos. But the most common problem we see, camshaft problems and head gaskets blowing. These things love to blow head gaskets. They've supposedly made a new improved head gasket. We've been putting them on. We haven't seen any come back, but it's too early to tell. But that's what we see a lot on this one. And carburetor problems, which you're going to have with all of them again, because, oh, yeah, that's another thing. Carburetor problems. Good thing I remembered that. Another common problem we see with this motor is the screw that holds the butterfly plate on comes out, gets sucked into the motor, then the thing runs wide open like it's got a governor problem. And it's not the governor, the throttle plate came off. So when the throttle plate comes off, there's nothing to regulate the throttle. So it runs wide open. And then sometimes that screw gets stuck in the head. Sometimes it passes through like a kidney stone. Sometimes it gets stuck in the kidney, which is the piston, and just hammers against the head. Sounds like it's got a rod knock. It's that little piece of screw that's stuck in there. And it hammers, hammers, and hammers. We've had one that hammered so hard that it actually stuck the rings in the piston. You might have seen that. And then the thing was smoking and blowing oil out because the rings are stuck. Because the little screw, you wouldn't think a little, and it's a brass screw. It's not even a hard screw, it's brass. So you think that soft screw wouldn't do much, just hammered and hammered and hammered. So that's the problems we see with this. Head problem, butterfly screw coming out, blown head gaskets, and of course, you know, your natural leaky valve covers and stuff like that. But that's the biggest problems we see at this. And occasionally the coils go out. We have no spark problems, coils go out. So let's talk a little bit about the carburetor and the carburetor problems we do have on this single cylinder intake with the multiple problems. They usually come with two different carburetors. The Leaky 6 or the Walbro. In my opinion, the Walbro is the better of the two. Now this one has the Walbro on it. And another thing, if you notice, you don't have to have this anti-backfire valve on there. That's optional. If yours has failed and you don't want to buy a new one because it's expensive, you got a couple of things you could do. You can cut off the tip, or you can get a bowl nut. They sell just the bowl nut. And there's the part number. Now the reason I like this carburetor over the Leaky 6 is because it's got a regular float and a regular needle and seat that you can replace. Now we got videos on this. So you can replace that seat and the needle. The Leaky 6 carburetor, that one is a lot of plastic. So let me show you inside the Leaky 6 carburetor. See? This whole assembly, all plastic. There's the main jet, just fell out of the center. Just fell in there. There's the main jet. runs up through the middle. Now if you notice, this one's sacked out already. So it's probably leaking. There's no float level to it. We have a video on this one too. Now sometimes, and this has happened a few times to us, we tried to rebuild this carburetor, put it back on, and it still wouldn't run right. It would surge horribly. And what I would end up doing is putting a Walbro on it, finding a junk motor that's got the Walbro carburetor on it, carburetor, and we would put one of these on and it would take care of the problem. So we were curious, we went online, see if anybody was making the Walbro in an aftermarket, and all we could find was the Leaky 6 in an aftermarket. So in my opinion, I don't like this Leaky 6 carburetor. It's junk, junk, junk. Belongs in the scrap barrel. Junk, junk, junk. Leaky 6 in the scrap barrel. Junk, junk, junk. What do we got in here? Oh, I don't want to show you. No, I'm going to show you. Here it is. Another Briggs & Stratton engine. This is the predecessor to the last one I showed you, that Intech. This is actually a good engine. It's got a regular good cast iron camshaft in it. It doesn't have that crappy camshaft like the one I showed you earlier, where the compression release breaks all the time. Problem we see with this motor over time, leaky needle and seat, which I have a video on where it shows you how to replace the needle and seat. Where it fills up the crankcase with gas because the needle and seat are leaking. But other than that, these engines, they've been around a long time. That's the most common problem we see. Coils do go out. They go on just about anything. Any of these small engines, after they get a lot of time on them, the coils go out. So occasionally we'll have these come in where the coils go out. That's another problem. So here's that same engine I showed you in the other one. That was a flathead where the spark plug was coming right out of the center of the head. This is basically the same block. They just made an overhead valve engine out of it. So this is the one with the valve cover, OHV, overhead valve. Overhead valve, that's what that means. And again, like I said, leaky valve cover gasket, set the valves, leaky carburetor, occasionally the coils go out. And then of course, you know, you're gonna have starter problems where the starter bendix goes bad. Some of them will have a plastic gear, some have a metal gear, but that's just, you know, normal over time. You're gonna have that when you got a lot of hours on it. Replace that starter bendix. But the major problems we see, setting the valves, coils, leaky needle and seat. I like this motor. This is a good motor. I like it. Here we got another Briggs & Stratton engine, single cylinder. This is the Vanguard. This is Briggs & Stratton engine that's made in Japan. This is an older Vanguard. This too is a good engine. Same problems as the other ones I showed you. Just setting the valves, leaky needle and seat. Occasionally the coils go out. But this again, this is a good motor too, this Vanguard single cylinder. Here's a Briggs & Stratton Vanguard Twin, V-Twin. See, this one's ours, this one's mine, this is my engine. Really don't see a lot of problems with these when they come in. Occasionally, blown head gasket, and that's usually due to a mouse getting in there and building a nest over the cooling fins, which makes the head bolts stretch because the motor can't cool itself, so it gets real hot. Stretches the head bolts, then they cool off, and when it does that a bunch of times, it usually blows the head gasket. But other than that, it's just, on these engines, I see just normal maintenance problems where they left gas in it, so we have to rebuild the carburetors. But no major issues, just standard, issues, fuel pump going out because it's just got a lot of time on it, or coil going out because it's got a lot of time on it, but no major failures. So this again is a good engine. What do we got behind curtain number 1? Here we go. Briggs and Stratton opposed twin. I like this motor. This is a good motor. We see a lot of these still, and these motors are old. Most common problem we see with this, and it's due to time, when it's got a lot of time in it, leaky sump gasket. This gasket in the back, this cover in the back. Starter problems, where the upper bushing in the starter wears out. And valve seat coming out, usually on the exhaust side, which I usually just put the seat back in, take a center punch, stake all around it. Never had them come back, just stake it back in. Good motor. Oh, and coil problems. They've changed the coil part number about 3 times. It's got that single Kohler. Got that single coil with the 2 wires coming out of it, because it sparks at the same time because the pistons are going like this. I've got a mini bike with a horizontal version of this motor on it. Sounds cool with straight pipes on it, runs real smooth, doesn't vibrate real bad. I like this motor. This is a good motor. But the most common problems, again, due to a lot of time and a lot of hours on it, because the gaskets get brittle and break down from the heat. Sump gasket, that cover gasket in the back, coils going out, and valve seats coming out. Other than that, pretty good, dependable motor. I like it. Okay, we're gonna touch on Tecumseh just for a second. This is not a real popular engine we see, but they are still around. This is Tecumseh's Formula, or they also call it an Enduro engine. We don't see a lot of them, but we do see them once in a while. Biggest problem is the ring gear on the flywheel wears off, and it's part of the flywheel, and you can't get the flywheel. That's the biggest problem we see occasionally. People come in looking for a flywheel, and it's like, yeah, all the flywheels are all stripped out and junk. You'd be lucky to find a good one. And another thing is, it's got that plastic float bowl carburetor on it, and there's a little O-ring gasket behind this screw, because this is where the main jet is. And if it wasn't updated to the O-ring, and it's got the flat rubber gasket with a tiny hole in it, over time that little gasket swells up and the hole closes off and can't get gas through the main jet. So I've got a video on this carburetor where you take that gasket out and you put just a regular standard O-ring in there, and that solves that problem. So those are the only 2 major problems we see on this. Flywheel, carburetor, and if it's cranking hard, like all of these that got compression releases on them, you have to set the valves. Now, one thing about this engine is, it's got a compression release on the camshaft, and if it breaks, they do make a kit to fix the camshaft, so you don't have to buy a whole new camshaft. Seen that rarely. but they do make one, so I thought I'd point that out. It's not a big major problem we see all the time, but be aware of that. That's all we're going to talk about Tecumseh. We're not going to talk no more. So after this, no more talking about Tecumseh. I don't want to hear any of you talking about it. What? What did you say? What? I didn't hear you. Oh, Kawasaki. Oh, you haven't talked about Kawasaki yet. Well, I don't have any Kawasaki's here. Except for this one. This is the water-cooled twin. We see a lot of these. This is, again, most common engines we see. Not what you see, what we see. Most common problem, running in and out on one cylinder. I've got a video on it where these connectors, we have to chop them out. You'll wiggle the wires, got a video on it. Wiggle the wires and it starts running on both and then not on both and then running on both. Usually got to cut these connectors off. Put regular connectors in because it's kind of expensive to buy these replacement connectors. So it's easier to just cut them off and then connect them together with pull-aparts. We got a video on it. And another problem they had with this engine in the past, 97 and back, is they put a plastic cam gear on the camshaft and it would fail over time. The camshaft was metal, but they riveted a plastic gear to the camshaft. 97 and back. If you got a 98 and newer, chances are it's got the metal camshaft. Again, made this engine in a oh, here come the cops. I guess I'm in jail now. They're coming to get me. I'm filming after dark. They made it in a horizontal and a vertical. But that's the most common problem we see, other than radiator plugging up over time and overheating, which all you have to do is take this screen out, take a pressure washer radiator, get all that dirt and debris out of there, and they quit overheating. But we see that a lot too, where it's overheating. We don't know why it's over. Probably needs a thermostat. I go, well, probably the radiator's just plugged up. Pressure wash it, you'll see a pile of dirt underneath it, and then you know, and then we go out and run it, doesn't overheat anymore. So again, common problems, you know, like the rapper Common. Here's the vertical version of that water-cooled Kawasaki we showed you. Again, this one had problems with the plastic camshaft. Actually, this tractor is in here because it's got the plastic camshaft. And that's what failed. So this is that. And then on these John Deeres, another common problem we see is that time delay module, which it loses spark to the motor. But that module is a John Deere thing. So it has nothing to do with the Kawasaki engine. It has to do with John Deere incorporating that module. And we have a video on that too that shows you where that module fails. You have no spark. So then people are out buying coils and all kinds of stuff just to find out that that time delay module, where's it at? It's in here somewhere, has failed and it kills the spark. Where is that module? I thought this one had a time delay module. I guess some of them do and some of them don't. This one doesn't. We'll go find one that's got a time delay module on it. Like I said, some of these have this time delay module on it, usually on the vertical shaft, but not all of them do. And if it does, it would be in this area right here on the engine. And the older ones is a square box. It's square and it's bolted to the engine. This is the newer one. But this is what it looks like. And when this fails, you'll have no spark. We have a video on it. But this is something to look for. And again, this is a John Deere part. It's not a Kawasaki part. And if you want, there's the part number, AM128906. It's not that much. This one I got marked at $29.41. You can probably find them on the inner screen. But this is a common problem we see, is this module going out if you have no spark. But again, this one doesn't have one. If it did, it would be in this area. And again, it would be round like this or square like a cube. And it would have a mounting point and it would mount to the tractor. Let me put this away. I keep one on hand because they go out. I'm not a John Deere dealer. I got to get these from John Deere. They don't just give them to me. They don't just go,
Taryl, here's a box of time delay modules.
they don't do that. So, to sum it up, those are the most common lawn tractor engines that we see, not that you see, and the most common problems that we see, not that you see, here at our shop. And you're probably thinking, oh, what about push mowers and what about pressure washers? That's not a lawn tractor. I said lawn tractor engines, not push mowers and pressure washers and log splitters and most common lawn tractor engines that we see in our shop. And there's your dinner. So, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Go to our web store. Buy our Taryl apparel. The link to our web store is at the end of the video, so make sure you watch the whole end of the video. Follow me. Facebook, Instagram. And again, I love you all. And there's your dinner. Oh, hey, Gary. Something wrong with that mower?
I just had this thing fixed here. Now it doesn't want to start. Think maybe you could take a quick look at it.
Looks like it's got oil all over it. Let me check the oil. It's halfway up the dipstick. Tastes like maple syrup.
Maple syrup? Well, how did that get in there?
Well, I didn't put that in there. Let's take a look in here. That doesn't look like gas. It's full of water.
What? Water? Well, how did that get in there?
Well, if I didn't know any better, I think little Johnny was playing lawnmower mechanic. Oh, you don't think that's funny, huh?
No.
Well, I'm sorry, Gary, but I'm gonna have to charge you again to fix this. Unless you want little Johnny to finish the job.
Well, I gotta have it fixed, so put me through the ringer again. Hey there, little Johnny. I gotta ask you something. You wouldn't happen to have been out here playing lawnmower mechanic with Grandpa's lawnmower, were ya?
Yeah, Grandpa, all tuned up. You only owe me $40.
Well, I don't know about that, Johnny. I don't think you're cut out to be a lawnmower mechanic. Why don't you aim for something else like, you know, a doctor?
I'm a doctor. Time for your colonoscopy, Grandpa.
Johnny, what are you doing?
It's junk, junk, junk. Belongs in the scrap barrel. Junk, junk, junk. Nikki 6 in the scrap barrel. Junk, junk, junk.